Yeah, they've changed their mind. They've changed their mind, Richard, because they realise they're not making the money. They're hated in Hollywood. They're not even invited to the Oscars or the Emmys. So King Charles has to wake up, okay? Because the idea that Harry and Meghan are coming back here just to be private citizens is delusional. Prince Harry and Meghan Markle were to Megxit the most unhappy royal homecoming in history. Yes, they are on their way back, folks. The dastardly duo, the fake Duke and Duchess, have tonight confirmed a return to the United Kingdom. They informed King Charles on Sunday. Prince William exploded, and can you blame him? Absolutely not.
They're coming back. Not next year, not even in the autumn. They are returning at the end of this month. Harry, Meghan, Archie and Lily are coming back to Britain in the next few days. Their stay is expected to be a lengthy one, several years, because Archie and Lily are going to enter the British education system.
6 years ago, this couple stood before the world and tore into Britain and the royal family. They claimed the country was racist and argued the palace had completely broken her. They repeated their story everywhere through interviews, a memoir, and Netflix. Once the money and headlines rolled in, they packed up and vanished. But now they are returning. By the end of the month, moving vans were booked and school slots secured. With the entire relocation ready, Britain woke up to one explosive question. How dare you? The story broke just before 10 on Wednesday night. By midnight, the entire country went wild. Phones buzzed, headlines flashed, and the news exploded much faster than anyone could have anticipated.
Always said the biggest risk, P. Dinah, for Prince Harry is to want to leave that woman while they are in California, because she would get custody of the children and he would not be able to return. So there is a lot going on here, P. Dinah, and I think a big part of this is Harry preparing for his post-divorce world, where he has the children in the United Kingdom. Because guess what? He's stupid, but when he reads in Vanity Fair, confirmation of a report that I first made, P. Dinah, that his wife is shopping around a post-divorce autobiography. Surely that's when you wake up and you say, I can't stay here. I can't stay here. She is setting me up.
So he's forcing her. He's forcing her hand. I'm going back with the children. I agree. This is why it was so sudden. This is exactly why it's so sudden. What's Meghan going to do if Harry says, I'm going back with the kids? What is she going to do? He has every legal right to go back with these children. Meghan doesn't want to go, but now her cards have been played. She doesn't have a chance now, because now this is going to be on UK.
Piers Morgan read the news and declared he might have to emigrate. From across the Atlantic, Megyn Kelly fired straight back, saying, "We have done our time here, my dear friend." Then Meghan McCain came swinging, with zero interest in being polite, claiming they could never hack it. She said, "Nobody gives a damn about D-list royals. Good luck to our friends in the United Kingdom. They are your problem now." Meanwhile, Lee Cohen took one look at the headline and dropped a single word: Armageddon. Nobody needed a secret group chat to coordinate those reactions. Within minutes, the same angry mood exploded from every direction as commentators began piling on. Social media went absolutely wild, and one message seemed to grow louder by the second. Harry and Meghan returning was bound to trigger absolute chaos.
Hearing this news tonight, I just urge Prince William and Catherine to stay strong. The public are with you. The British public do not want these chancers and grifters and no good people who actually have been on a campaign to destroy the British royal family back on British soil. This is a nightmare. They must not win.
Every poll that night delivered the same brutal answer. Nearly 9 out of 10 people asked if they wanted Harry and Meghan back. Reportedly chose one simple response: no, not maybe, not let's see what happens. Just a loud, unmistakable no. To the question of their return, 89% said no. Underneath the biggest video of the night, thousands of comments flooded in. But the comment that fought its way to the top wasn't even about Meghan. It was aimed straight at William, saying everything in just 3 words: William, stand strong.
I think this was Harry.
There lay the entire story, summed up by a single stranger in a comment box. Those 3 little words somehow captured all the anger, disbelief, and sheer audacity felt surrounding the entire situation. Let's look at the part the newspapers were apparently too polite to scream from the front page. Nobody wanted this comeback. Not the country, not the palace, not William, and perhaps not even Meghan herself. But one man wanted the door reopened, and King Charles finally agreed. Now, Harry and Meghan were heading back anyway, and whether Britain liked it or not, the royal drama was heading straight home.
We know the king is still battling cancer. Catherine has had this remarkable recovery, but they needed time and space, to use a quote, to move towards fuller, more...
Yeah, but Harry knows time is running out, Richard. I've been saying for a long time, Harry knows that the window is closing because the moment that George comes of age, which is in about 5 years' time, Harry is a goner. This is his last window of opportunity.
I wonder whether I stay in America now. I don't want to be in England when Harry and Meghan live there, going shopping to the local supermarket. Oh, have I introduced you to my husband? I'm Meghan Markle and I'm back in England. You're welcome. I might stay in America now. I don't want to go back when they're there. Yes, it's an insult that Harry and Meghan want their kids to be British, but you are free of those two grifters. America can rebuild from here.
Peter Hunt spent years as the BBC's royal correspondent, and he was never known for exaggerating. This was a man who chose his words like a solicitor building a case. And the term he picked for the Prince of Wales's reaction was apoplectic. Then Hunt dropped a line that should keep every palace advisor awake staring at the ceiling at 3 a.m. This raises the prospect of two rival courts, William's and Harry's. Two courts in one country with a single crown between them. That was no longer ordinary family tension. It sounded like two brothers, two competing royal camps, and a single crown sitting in the middle of a battle neither side would yield. This is William and Catherine's worst nightmare. Tom Sykes put it even more bluntly. A massive slap in the face for William. Then he raised the question nobody inside the palace seemed prepared to answer. What happens when Charles invites Harry for Christmas? Or when Harry decides he wants to attend Remembrance Sunday? And Sykes wasn't finished. He delivered a final line that made the entire royal mess sound even more explosive. There is no way the late Queen would have allowed this. She wouldn't have, not for a second. Suddenly, this wasn't just about Harry coming home. It was about Christmas, royal ceremonies, family appearances, and every future event where William and Harry might end up under the same roof again.
Harry and Meghan have got exactly what they want, which is they've enjoyed the privacy of traveling to the United States, living in a private home, of course, living their lives as they see fit, making money. So they're days away from returning, days away from tearing up that agreement, which was conducted and drawn up in good faith by the late Queen. Poor Elizabeth is no longer here to enforce that deal and to defend the legacy of her time as Queen.
We all know that anyone in Britain old enough to remember the late Queen realizes how differently things would have played out under her watch. William was absolutely boiling over the situation. From his side of this family war, he had every reason to see it as a massive crisis. Then royal insider Robert Jobson stepped in, speaking from deep within the palace circles. He wasn't watching this royal earthquake from a safe distance. He called it a divided crown and went further. This was the worst family rift in 90 years, stretching all the way back to the abdication. That is the reality. The split had become so serious, it could no longer be compared to an ordinary palace argument. Observers were now placing it in the same league as the deepest royal crises in modern history. Sakes. But the detail that truly turned this story dark was not a constitutional issue. It was deeply personal. Inside the Wales camp, no one forgot the aftermath of the Oprah interview. The online toxicity and nonstop pressure hammered Catherine while she carried private burdens the public knew nothing about. From their perspective, this did not feel like a brother simply moving closer to home. It felt like a massive storm system rolling straight into their own backyard. The public comments flooding in that night did not treat it like harmless gossip. People sounded like they were bracing for impact. They are dangerous to the Wales family, one commenter wrote, while another demanded extra security around their home by morning. Whether those fears were actually justified or not, the public mood was crystal clear. People truly believed Harry and Meghan's return would reopen a royal battle that never really ended.
Catherine and William. It'll be a nightmare for the British monarchy. This is something they do not need. And I'm sure we'll see Harry and Meghan during the Sandringham walk. They'll start to insert themselves more and more. And Charles, as we've seen, especially even inviting Andrew to Balmoral, has been very firm that blood is blood. And I think Harry is on his route back in, and I think Meghan will probably follow too.
The same three words kept appearing everywhere: William, stand strong. And that brings this entire clash straight to Christmas. And the one question nobody inside that family wanted to face: would William really take his 3 children to Sandringham? With Harry and Meghan sitting across the room, the answer is absolutely not. He would take them to the Middletons, leaving the palace scrambling to explain those painfully empty chairs. It shows just how upside down everything had become. Harry walked away from royal duty, complained on global television about being trapped, and turned private family drama into worldwide entertainment. Now he was sliding right back into the orbit of the brother who stayed behind to carry the heavy royal workload. There was no apology, no permission, and no quiet rebuilding. Harry was just coming back, forcing William to handle a situation he never wanted. To call that audacious barely even covers it.
She or Harry decides to leave, now he's got the upper hand with his family and the children already in school being established within the UK government culture and educational system. So this is something that Meghan does not want to do.
I'm going to bring you some facts about what this is really about. The marriage is on its last legs, and the money is running out fast. And Meghan Markle did not want to do this, trust me.
Here is what the polite newspapers would never print on the front page. Behind those Montecito gates, the cash was disappearing, and the marriage was reportedly fracturing far worse than anyone cared to admit. And Meghan Markle allegedly did not want this move at all. Not secretly, not reluctantly, and certainly not as a grand homecoming. Returning to the UK was strictly Harry's plan. Meghan was being dragged back toward a life she had already fought incredibly hard to leave behind.
As ever, despite her insistence that it's a smashing success, I think has been an abysmal failure. They failed out of Hollywood. We just have to look at Cookie Queens to see that. And so they're going back. They're going back in their fallback career and slinking back to the UK. And I believe it, and yet you don't believe it at the same time. And this is just going to be...
Think about that for a moment. Meghan spent 6 years building a narrative that Britain was a place she could never return to, calling it too hostile, cruel, and dangerous for her children. Yet now, she was reportedly boarding a plane at the end of the month and heading straight back. And that is where this relocation became a total nightmare for her brand, since everything she built screamed California. The constant sunshine, the gorgeous kitchen, the organic garden, and the wellness vibe with edible flowers sprinkled over everything. Being American was no longer just her location, it had become the core of her entire product. How do you transplant that glossy California fantasy into a rainy English countryside without completely shattering the illusion? You cannot. The sunshine vanishes, the image stops making sense, and that carefully packaged Montecito lifestyle dies the moment the plane lands at Heathrow.
I mean, Meghan, I agree. I don't think
Harry too. They're both ruthless.
There is no. I think he is weak. The problem is he's not very talented, and she isn't either, and he's not very bright. But I think she is an intriguer. We've seen proof time and time again where they spring things. Where they used to, for example, when members of the royal family were doing X as an engagement, they do something else to get publicity. This clearly shows that they're loose cannons.
Critics saw them as unpredictable. This marked a humiliating turn for Meghan, as the brand she spent 6 years building was publicly stripped away. The independent woman, the self-made founder, the global entrepreneur who walked away from an institution she claimed was too restrictive for her high ambitions. Now she was back in England, selling jam online from a rented estate. While America had grown colder toward her, it remained vast. A person could easily disappear for months, reinvent themselves, and then surface with a brand new project. Britain never worked that way. It was essentially one massive village teeming with cameras, critics, and citizens with incredibly long memories. There was nowhere to hide. Every outing risked becoming a major headline. Every cringeworthy moment could instantly go viral, and any clash between their past narrative and this new reality would be dragged right back into the spotlight.
So Meghan's Netflix deal, which involved 16 episodes of the truly horrific With Love Meghan show, was not fruitful. That deal stopped. Ted Sarandos tore up the retail agreement to sell Meghan's horrible jam and flour sprinkles. My husband! And of course, Harry's speaking engagements have been a disaster. He was earning $1 million per speech when they left the United Kingdom. It's gone down to $50,000 and the gigs are drying up. So Harry and Meghan have failed resolutely in the United States, and that's why they're coming back to Britain.
And somehow,
the evening managed to spiral into even more chaos. On live TV, one of Harry and Meghan's own supporters stepped up, declaring that they were the couple truly in love. Then she shifted her gaze toward William and Catherine, adding, "Look at Kate and William. That is a different story." She boldly declared that on national television, just hours after the comeback story broke, the host scrambled to intervene, insisting the Prince and Princess of Wales were deeply in love, turning what should have been a defense of Harry and Meghan into an absolute train wreck on live television. The entire defense completely fell apart right there under the studio lights. On the night they needed someone fighting their corner, their allies somehow manufactured a brand new scandal involving William and Catherine instead. If that was the rescue squad coming to save the Sussexes, they were already falling out of the saddle.
falling off the horse.
I have any idea, do you think, how loathed people feel about the millions because of the way they treated the Duke of Edinburgh? You said it half an hour ago, the Queen. And that's the reason that I believe that William has an issue here. He was fine.
And his wife, JK, and his wife.
Yeah, I just think it's extraordinary, and I think that these two grifters have no idea what the United Kingdom thinks of them.
You talked about the exile of the Duke and Duchess of Windsor. You know, the one thing that we can say is that after a certain time, when the Duke was crying poor all the time and, was constantly telling his brother George VI that he needed more money, that they didn't constantly throw it in the face of the monarch. I mean, this is such a brazen and malevolent move to move back after all of the unforgivable actions, behaviors, and words that were spoken. And Dan, they are unforgivable. That this son who was a traitor to his country and his birthright, to his royal birthright, is going to reestablish himself over there against the wishes of probably everyone. The monarchy, the people, the government. It's just unthinkable, and Armageddon is the only thing that I can think of to sum this up succinctly.
King Charles received the news by phone. On a quiet Sunday, the monarch discovered that his own son was bringing his family back to British soil. It was like a casual call to reschedule a delivery, a mere 3 days before the public found out. Before that, complete silence. Not a single whisper or clue. And when Harry and Meghan sat face to face with Charles in July, they apparently kept their cards close to their chest. Royal expert Robert Jobson, who has spent 30 years tracking this family, refused to sugarcoat the situation. They had presented him with a done deal, simply announcing that the children were coming. Grandfather would finally get to spend time with them. Sounds heartwarming, right? But then Jobson delivered a line that chilled the room. They were holding a gun to the king's head. In short, this was far from a warm family invitation. He was backed into a corner, forced to accept a decision already made on his behalf. Without a doubt, they were now using the children for clicks, headlines, brand power, and financial gain. And his ultimate verdict on the monarch who allowed this was just 4 brutal words. The king made a mistake. Predictably, the palace issued its carefully polished statement claiming His Majesty welcomed the chance to see the family in a private capacity. Let's pause and listen to how hollow that sounds. Supposedly, Charles was thrilled, yet this hardly felt like an eager father throwing open the palace gates. Instead, it looked like a man forced into an impossible corner, desperately trying to pretend the choice was his all along. And that was the core issue. King Charles may have been a warm, decent father yearning to stay connected with his grandchildren. But simple kindness was useless in this brutal royal feud. His hesitation to slam the door shut left William seething, the palace highly vulnerable, and Harry holding all the high cards. Charles desperately wanted to play the peacemaker, but each time he backed down, another family member paid the ultimate price.
I think looking back,
What Charles needed to do was glaringly obvious, and by Thursday afternoon, half of Britain was practically shouting it. Put your foot down, make a public stand, draw a hard line, and strip their titles. But Charles refused to act. He had ducked major confrontations in the past, and he was not about to find his backbone now. But here is the real sting, and it is not even about Harry. The media kept framing this as a touching tale about a father with a soft heart, as if his greatest flaw was simply loving his youngest son too much. It is a sweet narrative, but it entirely misses the point. Charles was not just Harry's father. He was the sovereign, the one man tasked with keeping the massive royal machine running. And when this ongoing family drama landed back on his desk, he had to weigh the futures of both sides very carefully. While Harry wanted a path back to Britain, William was left carrying the entire weight of the monarchy on his shoulders.
Difficult for the king is, as we said, he wants to meet his grandchildren. He wants the meet to take place. I'm sure you've got William there saying, Dad, you've got to be really, really careful because this could completely backfire. And I'm sure William doesn't want it to backfire, but I think there's been already quite a few occasions where William's probably turned around to his father and sadly said, see, Dad, I told you so. And it's really awkward for the king because, this is his son he probably knows his son is right with what he's saying, but he's still a father, he's still a grandfather, and he's still trying.
The other person the king had to consider was the loyal son who never walked away. William stepped up, shouldered the heavy workload, guarded the crown, and kept working while the family drama erupted around him. Yet, William did not even receive a warning call before this mess arrived at his door. The internal palace alarm was deafening. Whatever King Charles thinks he bought here, he paid for it with his heir's patience, and that account is running dry. Prince William could only be pushed so far. Then, Jobson voiced the exact fear haunting everyone inside the palace walls. Sooner or later, they would have to bring Prince Harry back into the fold or risk total uncontrolled chaos. And that was the trap. Returning was exactly what Harry wanted. The closer he got to the royal circle, the harder it became for William to keep the door slammed shut.
The Netflix money has run dry. That house is dilapidated, allegedly. And so now they're going crawling back. Okay, and I think Harry and Meghan, I think they're going to try to push Archie and Lilibet onto George, Charlotte, and Louis. I think they want all the cousins to be friends. I think they want the kids to come up in the next generation. You have Northwest and Mason and all the little ones coming up. I think Harry and Meghan, that is their plot. But this really just is interesting timing that they have the judgment. He's going to have to owe a lot of money. Their finances don't seem to be in great shape.
So, why return now? Simple. They had run out of material. That was the harsh reality behind it all. The old grievances were dry. The wild accusations had been recycled. Almost no relatives were left whose private lives hadn't been mined for content. Think about it, and suddenly their entire strategy starts to make sense. For 6 years, Harry and Meghan had exactly one blockbuster product, the royal family. That is what Netflix wanted. That is what publishers paid for. And that was what kept their explosive interviews dominating global headlines. Everything relied on palace secrets, family feuds, and rumors from behind closed doors. But eventually, even that shelf was bound to run bare. You can only sell the exact same royal bombshell so many times. Naturally, this meant another book, another tell-all interview, and more dramatic revelations about minor palace moments nobody else remembered. Perhaps the sky was the wrong color. Maybe Catherine didn't share her lip gloss fast enough, turning a tiny slight into the controversy of the week.
Sex terms with Gwyneth Paltrow.
Mother Goop, she would never send me a wickless candle. She would send me a vagina candle. But no, they should not be getting taxpayer-funded security anywhere, okay? If y'all have allegedly made all this money from Netflix and all these side deals, and who knows what other deals they've got going on. When you're someone like Prince Harry, rich people just give you money all the time, whether it's Silicon Valley or whatever deals you have going on,
The business model had collapsed, and their royal grievance train was no longer printing cash. Harry and Meghan needed to look royal again. Not officially, but just close enough that the flashing cameras, fancy invitations, and constant headlines would make it look authentic. And you simply cannot manufacture that kind of royal proximity from California. That was their new play. Proximity to the throne had become their actual product, but the underlying business numbers looked incredibly brutal. Inside Netflix, the mood had reportedly chilled to a single message: we are done. When Harry first left in 2020, he commanded massive speaking fees. Now, he was settling for a fraction of that amount at a Washington summit. And Meghan's grand dream was not just struggling, it was flatlining. The Hollywood gold rush had completely dried up. Their royal revelations were growing stale. Suddenly, living thousands of miles away from the monarchy did not feel like freedom anymore. It was terrible for business. Now, effectively, persona non grata in the United States, they simply are not that popular anymore. The stories of Harry and Meghan no longer move the needle. This is their biggest crisis in years. The critics argue this shows Meghan Markle stands for nothing. She once claimed these people drove her to the very brink of suicide, that they ruined her mental health, treated her horribly, and left her in tears until they had to flee the country. Yet, apparently, everything is fine now because they are running back the second they need cash, and King Charles has plenty. So they are heading back to King Charles like clockwork. It is completely textbook. Everyone can see right through it. It is entirely transparent. But Jobson's prediction was the one that sent a chill through this entire saga. It felt so calculated that one had to hear it twice. First, the publicized mercy mission. Then, a friendly photographer appears waiting for that perfect shot of Meghan crouching beside young children in a very familiar pose. An image designed to echo Diana, and then naturally they would want the cousins photographed together. A single family photo would become pure gold. Reconciliation, royal connections, and a massive wave of headlines, all wrapped up into a single frame. Meanwhile, their team assured American media that this sudden return was entirely about King Charles's health. Highly convenient timing, maybe concern for the king was genuinely part of it, but in this story, his illness also provided the perfect cover, a highly respectable reason to re-enter the royal orbit without admitting to any deeper motivations underneath. It seems clear that the absolute last thing Meghan Markle wants is to return to the United Kingdom, where she will face an even colder reception than in America. And her popularity in the United States these days is already incredibly low. At every turn, she is bound to face peril, leaving many royal experts in complete agreement on the matter. Clearly, there is deep trouble between them. It is incredibly hard not to feel for the king. Dealing with this level of drama during such a serious health crisis is almost too much for anyone to bear. That is the undeniable truth. But after years of public warfare, the public was not about to take anything on faith. While Prince Philip lay in the hospital, Harry and Meghan were busy preparing for their explosive interview with Oprah. As the late Queen entered the quiet sunset of her final years, their dramatic Netflix project was still quietly taking form. This time around, the public sympathy card just was not playing. Onlookers recalled the timing, the headlines, and the strange way private royal drama always collided with public Sussex branding efforts. Forgiveness was still possible, but blind trust remained entirely off the table. They were incredibly lucky to step foot back in the United Kingdom, especially since the current British government is aggressively working to tighten borders. Up on borders, attempting to lock out controversial figures who have absolutely no legitimate right to be there. To many critics, Harry and Meghan now look like unwelcome outsiders after the damage they caused to the nation. Yet one overlooked detail from that week slipped past the public, turning out to be the most revealing piece of all. Two rival national newspapers published identical stories on the same evening, sharing the exact same quotes, details, and strangely similar copy-pasted phrasing. Somehow, both publications proudly labeled the story a world exclusive. That was clearly not two independent journalists accidentally stumbling onto the year's biggest scoop. It looked like everyone was reading from the same script. A story loses its exclusive status the moment a rival outlet magically posts the exact same news simultaneously. By then, the illusion of a major scoop completely vanished. It resembled a highly coordinated press release masquerading under a sensational front-page headline. An unknown player wanted this narrative out, framed precisely, ensuring the entire nation would debate it over breakfast. Observers wondered how they would spin this sudden collapse of Megxit, especially with Meghan reportedly returning to live in the United Kingdom. The self-proclaimed global feminist and entrepreneur, a world-class influencer, was suddenly reduced to renting a modest cottage in Windsor, hawking homemade organic jam online for a few quick bucks. It was a deeply embarrassing moment for Meghan, revealing a story that was never actually investigated. Instead, it was served on a silver platter, and insider Robert Jobson provided the crucial details, making the arrangement seem highly calculated. The leaks were spoon-fed directly to the establishment press favored by palace insiders, as well as the Daily Mail. Yet, one prominent Fleet Street giant was strangely left in the dark. The publication that had just defeated Prince Harry in court, leaving him with a massive pending legal bill, was completely frozen out of the leak. According to Jobson, this was no accident. Someone had deliberately curated the list of who got the scoop and who got left behind. Suddenly, those twin exclusives looked less like active reporting and more like a strategic PR operation designed to lock Harry's legal enemies out. Critics pointed out the hypocrisy of orchestrating staged paparazzi photos and feeding leaks while simultaneously claiming to be a victim of privacy invasion. Ultimately, the only real casualty was Harry's bank account, stuck with a massive bill that earned him very little public sympathy. A hypocritical prince, a calculated list was drawn up, leaving one key outlet off. This was never a casual leak accidentally finding its way to reporters. It resembled a coordinated operation, and the exclusive access list gave the entire game away. The transactional nature of the arrangement was obvious. Keep the coverage glowing and reap the rewards. Doing so guaranteed front row access when the plane touched down, capturing every single exclusive shot, walk, and family outing. Those highly lucrative photographs explained why the sudden burst of positive media coverage began making complete sense. This was far from typical breaking news. Harry and Meghan did not just casually announce their relocation. They planted the story strategically, ensuring the sole media outlet locked out of the loop was the very same opponent Harry had just fought in court. A coincidence? Hardly. Inside the high-stakes world of royal PR, an anonymous player was carefully deciding who received access and who got ignored. The situation highlighted how much Harry missed his home country, matching months of observations about his incredibly tense body language in America. It became increasingly obvious that the Sussex brand, both together and as individuals, had failed to capture the United States. Sources suggested that Harry felt deeply encouraged by the modest crowds that gathered to support him during his July visit to the United Kingdom. Upon returning home, he reportedly told Meghan that people were actively asking about her well-being. He was met with genuine cheers, a reminder that people rarely take the time to show up for those they dislike. Opponents generally stay away, proving that despite the massive backlash, the prince still maintains a small, dedicated base of active supporters. Yet, some warn these supporters pose a threat to the monarchy, fueled by anger and accusations of institutional racism within the palace. So, what happens when the end of the month finally rolls around? Kelvin Mackenzie spent 13 years editing The Sun, pointing that newspaper straight at Britain's biggest controversies, knowing exactly how quickly the public mood could turn. His prediction was brutally simple. Meghan faced a very real threat of being booed during public appearances. Then Alison Pearson raised the question hanging over the entire comeback, who actually wants them back? But her next question cut even deeper. What happened to Britain being a horrible racist country that Madam could not stand living in? There lay the ultimate contradiction. No one could escape it after 6 years of bitter accusations, painful interviews, and explanations about why Britain had become unbearable. Harry and Meghan were supposedly packing their bags and coming right back. The old story said they had to leave. The new story said they wanted to return. Britain was waiting to hear how both could possibly be true. Many believe nothing those two say can be trusted. They are widely viewed as unreliable narrators. Consequently, their supporters remain fiercely protective, often harassing the working royals because they still believe the couple's initial narrative. After all, they produced a 6-hour Netflix docuseries accusing the United Kingdom of widespread racism, painting the entire country and its critics in a terrible light. It has been absolute chaos over the last 6 years, making the assumption that everything will suddenly be fine seem incredibly naive. It shows how detached from reality those two are. And here was the question waiting for them the very second they stepped off that plane. If Britain really was everything they had spent years describing, a country poisoned by racism, a vicious press at every door, and a royal family that made life unbearable, why on earth would they willingly return? More importantly, why bring their children into the very environment they fought so hard to escape? That contradiction followed the comeback like a shadow. Either the danger was as terrible as they claimed, making this return impossible to explain, or the story had become far more complicated than the version they sold to the world. Either way, the moment those wheels touched British soil, the questions would land right with them. Ultimately, the prevailing sentiment is that no one in the United Kingdom should ever trust them again. It is highly unlikely that Prince William will ever trust him again. The same goes for Catherine. Even if King Charles wants to let his son back into his life, which is understandable for apparent critics, still raise serious concerns about his leadership. While people support the king, critiques of his leadership remain, indeed, especially regarding national protection. It is fascinating to watch them crawl back now, but trust is gone after a relentless cycle of tell-all books, reality shows, docuseries, and Oprah interviews. In the end, past behavior remains the most reliable indicator of future actions. Johnson believed the monarchy was heading straight toward a media circus unless someone finally took control of the situation. And on the very night this comeback story exploded, things got even crazier. A commentator appeared on live British television and actually argued that William should be bypassed, leaving the crown to Harry instead. King Henry IX, she called it. It was merely one pundit's fantasy, but that was not the point. The fact that such an idea was floated on national television hours after the news broke showed just how volatile the royal conversation had become. And that was the chaotic atmosphere Harry and Meghan were supposedly walking straight back into. Which brings us to the ultimate question, why now? It was not simply about the money. Even if their funds were draining rapidly, and despite what their publicists fed to American media about King Charles's health, a far larger motive drove this return. And the real reason was becoming increasingly difficult to hide. Much of the mental health advocacy he is involved in is suspected of being fraudulent. Reports indicate he wanted his father involved in the Invictus Games, explaining his scheduled return to the United Kingdom in September anyway. He wanted his father back in the fold primarily because they needed funds and intended to secure royal titles for their children. Meghan continued to use her Duchess of Sussex title to market her lifestyle brand, selling everything from jams and jellies to flour sprinkles. This return would elevate that branding strategy. A metaphorical clock was ticking, and Harry could hear every second passing. Charles was the parent who might still welcome him. William was the brother Harry knew would never open that door easily. The moment William eventually wears the crown, everything will change: the titles, the status, the invitations, and the last pieces of royal scaffolding Harry and Meghan carried into their new life. So the move had to happen right now. It had to happen while a more forgiving father still wore the crown. That's why King Charles received a quick phone call rather than a real family talk. In this brutal royal feud, it was never about a son simply missing his father. It was a brother watching the clock run out. One can draw their own conclusions. But skip the sentimental homecoming narratives. Real plans aren't made in secret. Alerting a father at the final second while faking a spontaneous family reunion doesn't qualify as a heartwarming homecoming. It was a strict deadline. By nightfall, Britain had already delivered its harsh verdict, with one dominant message rising far above the digital noise. The public urged William to stand strong, because if this royal storm was truly returning, he would surely need to. Reports suggest they have secured a private home, with most signs pointing toward the Windsor area in Berkshire. The property is expected to sit close to the Windsor estate, though London remains a possibility. Signs point to somewhere in the southeast of England. If they settle in Windsor, it means Harry will become a direct neighbor to William and Catherine's property on the estate. This close proximity raises suspicions that Harry might be trying to deliberately provoke and shadow his older brother. The endless list of grievances always arrives first, while the expected apology never seems to materialize. Given their history, this return looks less like a quiet homecoming and more like a volatile royal showdown, waiting to explode the moment their plane touches British soil. And now the question remains, upon their arrival, should the palace put it in writing that they aren't working royals, drawing a sharp line between family and crown? Or will King Charles soften once more, allowing those boundaries to blur and risking another massive clash with William? The world is left debating whether Charles is making a massive mistake or if bringing Harry closer could somehow calm this royal war. For everyone following this royal drama, hitting the like button, subscribing to the channel, and sharing this video helps keep the coverage going. The ongoing debate continues to unfold down in the comments section. Thanks for watching, and stay tuned for the next